You want to say that?
Yep. Hi, everyone. It's Deborah and Kimberly. We're back. We took a little unexpected break. We had a couple of issues arise. I had one, Kimberly had one, and so we couldn't make it live. But we're happy to be back today. Hi, Kimberly. How are you?
Hey, hey, Deb, how are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. It's a little rainy here in New York today. Um,
It's
so
35 degrees here. It was 70 yesterday. It's 35 today. It's going to be 42 tomorrow. Who knew? And it's April.
I
What?
know. I know it's not 30 here today, but it's definitely chilly, and it's going to be chilly tomorrow. But it's a good day to stay in, have a cup of tea, I think.
Mm.
Um, but anyway, we're happy to be here, and today we're going to talk. We're going to have a serious talk about the idea of hate, and how much hate is kind of taking over the ethos around us in so many different ways. And, what can we do about it? And why does it exist? And, what can we do about it? So I'm going to start off by just throwing it over to you, Kimberly. I know we've had some talks about it between the two of us, and you have some really good information to share.
Yeah, I hate the idea of having this conversation, but I think to your point, I think it's extremely important. And not only is it important to have the conversation, it's important to help people have the conversation. And so, there have been almost 3,800 incidents against our Asian American, Pacific Islander sisters and brothers. And what's so horrible about that is that we can trace it to the root, right? And so we spend so much of our time in this cycle of rinse and repeat with hate crimes and hate incidents. We came off of spring 2020. We had COVID, which is a source of hate. Masks is a source. Wearing a mask is a source of hate. Getting a vaccine is a source of fear, right? Social injustice against African Americans, Black people, people of color, sources of hate. And then we come now and we're talking about anti-AAPI hate. And we have to stop this cycle. Not only are we've had 3,800, and as we have this conversation now, I'm sure it's more than that, but 68% of those hate crimes are against women, right? The AAPI women. And so you have to wonder, like, we have hate, we have fear, and then I think we have this need to dominate, because why is it so that 68% of the crimes are against AAPI women? And so when you think about that and you sit back and understand that my dog doesn't like the idea of that, because I hope you all can hear, he does not like this idea of hate.
He's
barking because he's mad that we are actually haven't had this conversation. But no, is this serious? What do we do and how do we handle it? Because it's such a strong emotion and it is driving such terrible action. It permeates everything that we do.
Yeah.
And so how do we manage it in the workplace, right? Yeah. And not so much manage the hate, but manage the effects of the hate.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's important to talk about what we can do. I just want to talk for a moment about a couple of other things before we move on too, is that, I've been reading about, as you mentioned before, COVID has created, the politics of it, and it's created hate, people hating each other for wearing masks, not wearing masks, and all of these things. And then you have states that are starting to open up completely. And, according to the health guidance, that shouldn't be happening yet. We're close, but we shouldn't be doing that just yet. If we can just hang on a little bit, we should be able to hopefully protect ourselves and protect each other, which is so important. But a good example of how sort of that unrest and sort of hate around the virus can impact the bottom line is, I've read some interesting articles about what happened in Texas is that they have opened up and, I guess the idea is let's open up, we can get the economy going again, we can do it faster. And actually what happened was that people who were coming in to do large events and group events canceled on them because the people coming in had these great spaces to go to in Texas. But when they found out that people weren't going to be wearing masks and there wasn't going to be any kind of precautions taken, they got nervous and they didn't want to be there in a place where everybody was just out. So they pulled back, they canceled. And that's a direct bottom line hit to those businesses. So it was an unintended effect. But I think that if everybody could get on the same page maybe and try to protect each other just a little while longer and not let the sort of anger and hate get in the way, that would probably be good.
Well, I think, to that point, Deb, you said hopefully everybody can get on the same page. I think that's not going to happen, right? Yeah. Like just being the pragmatic person I am, that's not going to happen. But what you're saying is really important for people to understand, because what you're saying, or what I'm taking from what you're saying, is that the broader of America is like, hey, hello, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. And actually 75% of Americans polled said, we want to do what we need to do so that we can get over this, right? So whether that means wearing a mask, getting a vaccination, staying socially distanced, we want to do that. And your example proves that. But what's happening, I think, is people are making decisions. Certain people, not all, but there are people who are making decisions based on the fringe or based on sound bites from certain, talking heads. And so you are led to believe that more people are of the, we want to go forward. We want to just open everything up. When, while we're never all going to be on the same page, 75% of us are on the other side of it, right? And I think that's an important point to make. Because when you think of the hate and the fear, to me, it's all based on premeditated ignorance, right? Because you're premeditated, right? Like, so you're predestined to just make decisions without doing your research, right? And it's based on these emotional fears, or which brings us back to these hate crimes that are not new. They're just being reported, right? And so we can talk about that. I know there's more points that you wanted to make, and we can go on to the other points later. But I just wanted to say that, I think there's something to what you're reporting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I know that everybody won't be on the same page, but as close as we can get, and then as we kind of segue into what can we do about it, I do have this sense, that people, sometimes we dig our heels in, right? We could be angry at something or think we know something. And the more people push back at us, the more we dig our heels in and don't really think about it as we should. And I think that happens with hate as well, where it's easier to put up a barrier, to take whatever isms you have in your mind about a certain group of people or a certain topic and put it out there as a barrier and hate and just walk away. It's a lot harder to say, let me listen to what this person has to say or these people have to say. Let me examine my own feelings. Like, why do I have such anger at this group of people or this subject? Like, where is it coming from? And really doing the work around it. That takes a lot more time, dedication, and desire. It's much, much easier to just kind of put things off and hate. And I just think, we have to think hard about what that really gets us, and is it worth it, and is it worth the work?
Well, unfortunately, that's kind of the history of America in so many ways. So, we talked about, to that point, we were talking about 1982, right? Like, long time ago. But 1982, there was a rash of hate crimes against Asian Americans, because that's when Japanese, Toyota, Japanese car makers, they were leading in car sales in the United States, right? And instead of kind of sitting back and saying, well, why is that happening? It certainly wasn't because of the Asian Americans who lived in the United States. It was because a company in Japan they were more innovative
Need a better car.
Exactly, and tapped into what we needed from automobiles, where the American car makers were stuck in what had worked as opposed to what the future looked like. And the crazy thing, this is why I keep saying premeditated ignorance, is because the attacks were on and many times Asians. I'm sorry, not Asians, Chinese. When I don't know a Chinese car company, right? Like, so Chinese people weren't, they shouldn't have been attacked at all. No one should be attacked. And the fear is driving people to just do the most ridiculous, crazy things. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, why would you attack an Asian American who is in America and has the same chance of getting COVID as you do? It's not like they carry it on their person. I read an article the other day about an Uber driver, right? Because some Uber drivers, or, that gig economy driver, they've been, when they see that the pickup is Asian, they don't want to pick them up. And so there was an interview with one of the drivers who said, I just picked up a woman, she's Asian, I hope she doesn't give me COVID. What the hell? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's that ignorance that people have, and that fear of, I don't know, learning something new. It just, I don't get it, right? Yeah. Like, I don't understand it. But we could talk about that forever, because I just don't get it. But to the fact that it's not new. It's not new. So 82, we talked about 82. We can go back, and just like, the African Americans had Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was, their Black Wall Street, and it was very successful until white people burnt it down. There was a community very much like that in California of Asian Americans. White people burnt it down. Every time there's an opportunity for, we're Americans, right? That's what America's supposed to be. It's supposed to be about all the people that come together. However, there are certain groups that when something happens, they become the victim of anything. So right now we're in the middle of this fear and confusion around COVID, and that is causing people to attack Asian Americans because of what someone said. And
yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
It is. And I think, I think your next point is, what are a few things that you think in the workplace in particular, because we like to talk about sort of bringing it back home to, in the workplace where we're all together, hopefully in a little bit more diversity than we've been in the past. How do you handle these issues?
Yeah. So here are some ideas. One, as a peer in your workplace, as a peer, we had these conversations in spring, and we continue to have conversations. What you do, what do you say? How do you work? How are you an ally? How do you meet your peers at work? And we had the conversation about African Americans. Now we're going to have a conversation about Asian Americans, Pacific Islander group. It's not that deep, but it's really important. You have to acknowledge, right? You have to acknowledge that you know what's going on, right? The news is distressing. It's horrible. It's unacceptable. How can I help you, right? And helping could come in really different forms. You can offer to take a meeting off their plate. You can, do they need to just take a day, right? What can I do in terms of the workplace to make your load a little lighter so that you can handle what's going on? So that's an idea.
Yeah.
I think also use your privilege to acknowledge that it's totally bad, right? Like, some people are influencers in the workplace. There are ways to, are there IRGs? Is there an organization that is local or not local that the peers can get together and colleagues can get together to raise funds for? Those are ways that you can work together as colleagues. Now, if you're a leader, right, then you have even more privilege. And here's the opportunity for you to speak to the group. When we went through this in the spring, so many leaders said they didn't know what to say, so they weren't saying anything. That is totally unacceptable, right? You have to say something. These are people who are part of your team, part of your community, part of your family, your work family. As a leader, you have to acknowledge that what is going on is not right, and you won't stand for it personally, and you won't stand for it as a company, right? And that walk that walk. Don't just talk to talk. Walk that walk. It's more than just a post on Instagram. It is, putting money behind that. Maybe the company gives a donation for, the what is it? Anti AAPI hate is a large organization, and there's so many more. Mm-hmm. The other is, what can you do for your workers? Many of them probably, depending on where you are in urban settings, use public transportation. That has to be frightening, especially if you're a company that is saying you have to come into work. And in certain jobs, you don't have the opportunity to stay at home. And so if you're in those jobs and you're one of those companies, then you need to provide assistance for your Asian American, your AAPI employees. Is that contracting with Uber, contracting with a car company, whatever that is? Consider something like that, or figuring out a way for that person to work from home. They're just a few ideas. There are a lot more, but those are just a few of how you can, support your colleagues and your employees who are in these marginalized minorities.
Yeah. So I think all those are great points, and definitely things that people can do. I don't think they're that hard. You just have to want to do it. So Kimberly, what do you say the bottom line is here today?
Usually it's very wordy, but I'll be very succinct. Be respectful and use that muscle that is empathy. Empathy and respect. That's my bottom line.
Excellent. I love those two things, and easier said than done sometimes, but I think that they are great things to keep in mind. So a couple of things before we sign off. We are, right when this ends, we are going to jump off into Clubhouse, and we're just going to continue this conversation. And the actual room is called exactly this: What's Hate Got to Do with It? So if you're on Clubhouse and you have a minute to come and join us, we would be happy to have you. And then second, next week we'll be back, and we're going to talk about styles in the workplace, how different styles are regarded in the workplace. And sometimes certain styles are considered to be better for business than others. And then how do you manage that depending on what your style is, and also if you're a leader. So I think that'll be an interesting topic to talk about.
Agree. I'm looking forward to that conversation. And I'm actually looking forward to continuing this conversation. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I put a poll out there. I'd love to continue this conversation and share tips and ways that you can continue to be an ally, effective, and move this conversation forward. I also want to thank all of our contributors today. We've had quite a few comments, and I want to thank them all. Unfortunately, I can't respond on this platform to everybody, but I do want to thank them. And hopefully those conversations will continue, because we have conversations on YouTube, Facebook, and on LinkedIn. So I hope those conversations continue. And thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.